Hare Krishna. Welcome to the final session of day 2, and indeed the final session of the 11th Annual BBT Africa Conference. This final session is entitled Timeless Wisdom for a New World, and we have His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj joining us for this concluding session for today. So we've had 10 sessions, this being our 10th session throughout the BBT Africa conference, this online conference that started yesterday. And we've covered a variety of topics related to the distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books. But part of what we have done in this conference is dedicate the time that we have all invested in sharing these topics with you, and you, the audience, participating by listening in and sharing your questions. We've dedicated that in honor of not only Srila Prabhupada, but one of Srila Prabhupada's Sankirtan generals, His Holiness Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj. So we'll play a tribute video, again to honor the memory of His Holiness Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj, whom we've just learned his Vapu, his body, has just arrived recently in India. So throughout this journey that we've traversed through the conference, we've had the auspicious mercy and blessings of His Holiness Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And we'll go straight into the tribute video right now.
Prabhupada is the founder Acharya, Prabhupada's position of the founder Acharya. Because I consider that it is very important for us to recognize Prabhupada's very special position in ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada is not only the founder of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada is the Acharya of ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada is the Guru of ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada is the Guru of all the devotees of ISKCON for all. This understanding is very important for
But then I came across a book by Srila Prabhupada, called The Nectar of Devotion. And when I started to read it, practically from the very first page, everything became...
It made sense to you?
Yeah, it made sense to me. Like, I was aspiring for liberation those days.
Yes.
The goal of life was to become liberated.
This is the life story of that great personality in whose memory this monument has been built.
Again, BBT Africa extends its heartfelt gratitude to His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj for not only his contribution to the BBT, but to ISKCON, to Prabhupada's movement, ISKCON at large. And we continue to pray for Maharaj's guidance and blessing through the example of his life. So we'll now go on to today's topic, this final session with His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj. And I'll just like to introduce Maharaj first before we commence. His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami is an editor, publisher, and teacher. He is a disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He has served as a trustee in the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust and has played an extensive role here on the African continent in establishing the African BBT alongside His Grace Govardhan Prabhu. And apart from this, his services in publishing, he travels widely teaching about the philosophy and culture of Krishna consciousness. And he's also the author of the book titled Vanity Karma, Ecclesiastes, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Meaning of Life, which won the 2016 Benjamin Franklin Gold Award for the year's Best Book in the Religion category. Maharaj, thank you for joining us and giving us your time for the conference. It's strange times that we're living in the world. it's been a tumultuous time in terms of so many things that have taken place. And this conference has been, we've brought up so many different topics in relation to Srila Prabhupada's books. But now when we come to this final session, and we this session called Timeless Wisdom for a New World, we're obviously in the midst of a global pandemic. Virtually all interactions that we have, how we associate in the world, usually we'd have these conferences under one roof with hundreds of devotees attending. And here we are having it online. So there's definitely some things that have changed. But I thought this session would be important to bring a conclusion to this conference by asking ourselves the question, how is the timeless wisdom of Srila Prabhupada's books, these books on Krishna consciousness, these books on Bhakti Yoga, still relevant for the world that we face today?
More relevant. They didn't believe us. We told them what the world was. We told them that the big problems are birth, death, disease, and old age. We told them that you can't really make this into a happy world where everything goes the way you'd like it. And most people didn't believe us. But this pandemic demonstrates that what we're saying is, of course, true, and anyone could have seen it, but it's now written in large, bold letters for everyone, that these are the real problems of life, that we go through old age, disease, death, and then something else happens. We don't know what, unless we have some spiritual guidance. These are the real problems of life. So this has always been, the other stuff is irrelevant. All the things that they thought are crucial are less relevant than this. Beyond that, even if when you come away from the big questions, the cosmic questions, then when you get down to practical questions, again, we become relevant. We're saying not to depend on an artificial way of life. We're saying not to depend on a civilization built from marketing unnecessary necessities. We're saying that the real needs are food, clothing, shelter, and spiritual realization. These are the essential things. So we're giving the right direction for society. Don't stay in your cities and try to and live in a miserable, frenetic attempt for happiness by an artificial way of life. Live simply and get your pleasure, your happiness from within, from the eternal platform, from understanding your own identity and your relationship with Krishna. That's becomes more and more relevant. Even simple practical thing. Your mind is going to be disturbed now. You're locked in. Your financial future is now up in the air. Everything is open to question and open to risk. So what will you do under these circumstances? So the very first thing, take this mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hari Ram, Ram Ram, Hari Hari. The mind will become a little happy, a little peaceful. And we can go on from there. We've started a website, by the way, mantrabreak.com. It's a one-page website. Nothing else there but this simple message. Chant Hare Krishna, and then the sound is there so you can press the button and listen. You don't have to commit yourself to anything. There's no anything else. Just hear this mantra because it's more relevant than ever. And the philosophy that goes with it is more relevant than ever. And the way of life is more relevant than ever.
Yeah. Thank you. That, I think, actually brings us nicely to some of the points that I'd like us to look at that have come up during the course of the conference. And one of those points, especially in the sessions we've had with His Grace Kunteya Prabhu earlier today, who his session was a reflection on Bhagavatam, and with Bhakti Dhir Damodar Maharaj, was speaking about how Srila Prabhupada's books changed his life. I think it's important and incumbent on us as publishers of these books by Srila Prabhupada, this transcendental literature, to also send out a message of encouragement on reading these books. So could you perhaps touch a little bit on the importance, especially for us as devotees, to read these books, to invest our time and our energies to really understand the subject matter?
Well, that's everything. If we don't understand what we're doing, then we're certainly missing out. Some of us may be more philosophical, some of us may be less philosophical, but the message is simply presented, and it's essential for understanding who we are, what we're doing, where we hope to go. And this is our nourishment, this is our food. This is that Vaisheshika Prabhu made that point earlier, that what we distribute is the overflow from our own spiritual happiness and spiritual enthusiasm. That comes from reading, from chanting. So reading the books, and you'll get nectar. It's not like an obligation. You have to read half an hour a day. Otherwise, you'll go to hell. But it's a joy. And if we regularly read and hear, these days I tend to do a lot of hearing. I'm just hearing the books read. It's less eye strain for me these days. Just to hear Prabhupada's books read is wonderful. And of course, to read them. We should certainly read them and study them and then speak from them. When you speak from the books, then you get further realization about what you've read and further impetus to go back and read more so that you'll have still more stuff within you, knowledge, realization that you can share with others and that you can that can propel you or carry you along to where you ultimately want to go, finally to the lotus feet of Krishna.
Yeah. Just on that point, there's viewers joining us on our Zoom webinar, and there are those who are joining us via Facebook from all across the world. I know our GBC strategic planning team is also streaming this on their network. So if there are any questions on any one of those platforms, please feel free to send through those questions, and we'll definitely try our best to field them and put them forward to Maharaj over here. So I just want us to also look at a couple of practical BBT topics that came up during this conference, seeing it as it is a BBT Africa conference. And Africa, as was alluded to by Govardhan Prabhu in his opening presentation, is a vast continent with more than 2,000 languages. And the BBT has covered in total 18 of those languages in their various publications, whether they be our local language books and pamphlets, etc. Now moving into audiobooks and so on. And a large population of our continent is French speaking as well. And we had, and we've heard from, you know, His Holiness Bhakti Charadeshna Maharaj, including our BBT Africa ambassador Tamal Krishna Prabhu in Mauritius, about, you know, just the different challenges in bringing in French books into those spaces. I know you've spent a lot of time previously going to West Africa, interfacing with many of these devotees in Francophone Africa. For us who are looking at this problem anew and have been tasked to, you know, find solutions for what sort of experiences can we expect, and what sort of recommendations can you give us, you know, as we try to embark on that path?
Well, of course, I'm no longer in the loop here as far as what happens on the level of the international BBT. So I could just speak as a citizen. As a citizen, somehow or other people have to get the books. Somehow or other people have to get the books. And it doesn't matter how the BBT is organized, what divisions it's broken down into, who's in charge of what our internal protocols are. All of that stuff finally doesn't matter to the person on the street who needs to get these books. And it's urgent, it's essential. It's been talked about and swirled around for what, so many years now. Somehow or other, the barriers need to be kicked down, and these books need to get out to Francophone Africa. How exactly that's done, that's up to the people in charge. But that's what I would say as a citizen, is that it's essentially outrageous that these books not be available when Africa is such a huge French-speaking area. They must be made available. And I've made some suggestions to you offline, which I won't repeat online because they would generate controversy. But anyone who wants to get in touch with you and know what I said, it's fine with me. But somehow what it finally boils down to is, one way or another way, these books have to get out there. And that's a must. And African BBT has a great responsibility there to see to it.
Yeah. I thought that was just an important point for us to touch on, and to make it clear to our Francophone constituency that we hear your appeal for books. So thank you for sharing that, Maharaj. Then I want us to reflect
on beyond that. It's not enough. You know, we've been saying for years that we hear that we hear. So
yeah.
Time for hearing should be over. We've heard. Now, somehow or other, it's time for action. Those books must get out there. Hearing and talking and hearing and talking. It's how long will we go on hearing and talking? We'll die before these, you know, die hearing and talking. We want books. physical books on site, ready to hand over to the French-speaking readers. That's what we want. How you do that, that's up to you, but that must be done. That's all. And Prabhupada wouldn't want to hear about anything else, but Prabhupada this and but Prabhupada that. Prabhupada would say, why are they not getting the books? They must get the books. That's all.
Thank you, Maharaj. And I think this fits in perfectly to this next point that we can discuss, and it's something that Vaisheshika Prabhu mentioned. In the 4 laws of book distribution,
you have to have books.
You have to have books. So we've spoken about simply having books, but then this next aspect, organization.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I've mentioned, it's such a diverse and variegated continent, a vast continent in terms of geographic span. In our panel discussion on the Sankirtan mission in Africa, which included Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu, His Grace Srivas Prabhu from Ghana, and we had Mother Dwarka Vasini and Tamal Krishna Prabhu. We mentioned the point about spending more time coming together, reflecting, sharing realizations about book distribution in our different areas. And I think what this conference has achieved with it being online is that it has exposed different regions of Africa to each other's triumphs and challenges, which is beautiful in and of itself, because it's generated so many fresh ideas, and that's something we want to continue. So the question I want to put to you, Maharaj, and it's something that Vaisheshika Prabhu touched on, is the idea of working more closely together as a team on the continent in order for us to really tackle the challenge of distributing the books to the 800 million plus population that we have here.
Well, sure, that's the organization is essential. That's how things go on. And I suppose the pandemic has also taught us that we can associate more closely through electronic means, and particularly thinking about West and Central Africa. We tend to be more focused on Mauritius, Kenya, South Africa, and those main places, whereas Nigeria is huge, Ghana is huge, Congo is huge. We have all of these areas with tremendous potential, and where so much where we need to invest energy, and we can see so much happening. There's so it's very good that you're, even a sort of shortcoming of the conference in recent years is that it's really been regional. People who, when you hold it in Kenya, the people from Kenya can come. When you hold it in Durban, the people from Durban can come. So now that and then you spend a lot of money to bring somebody in from, distant places. So now with less expenditure, you can reach people from and involve devotees from all over the continent. So that's excellent. And yeah. And one thing, because you mentioned, all those thousands of languages and so on. Finally, it depends also on the development of ISKCON, because the BBT and ISKCON go hand in hand. It's not that we're going to just print books in exotic languages and wait for something to happen. But when there's work on the ground to spread Krishna consciousness, then there's a need for books to go along with that work and to further that work. So for those who are on the ground, we need to be able to supply the books they need. And the BBT can take the initiative also to say, let's build up things that are already built up, yatras that are already started, let's help them, let's help them and encourage them. And to see also new areas. We could have something here, we could have something here, even to spot opportunities that we might be missing. Chinese, just for example, there's no Chinese yatra for Africa, and yet there's a huge potential market for Chinese books. So it's a niche, it's not, but it's a huge niche actually. So French, Arabic eventually comes within our area of cooperation. French, Arabic, and English, those are your three main languages. And then we come to Swahili and then Xhosa and Zulu and so on.
Okay. There's, in various sessions, we've had a number of authors that have come on and, spoken about their new publications, either publications that have just been printed or are in the pipeline. Earlier on, we had yesterday.
Pranada.
Yeah, we had a Grace Pranada Mata, we had Mother Urmila and Kamalasita Mataji today. And yesterday, of course, we had another author, His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj, who that was a very special session, a session that I enjoyed very much.
Wonderful session.
And you yourself as an author, Maharaj, you've published a book within the BBT, of course, Vanity Karma. And it's a question that many people in our audience have asked, the question about writing. And Giriraj Maharaj, in fact, in a personal email yesterday, he said the letter Srila Prabhupada sent him about his personal instruction to him to write, and how Prabhupada said, in fact, this is a service for everyone as well, to write and reflect. So could you perhaps speak about the importance of developing authors, and not just that as like a formal activity, but just writing as a tool for personal reflection and how it helps in our Krishna consciousness?
Yeah, that was the first thing before we develop authors. The first thing is that we write for our own purification, for our own realization, to crystallize our thoughts. When you write, you have to think. To write, you have to think. So if you're writing about Krishna consciousness, you have to think about Krishna consciousness. You have to connect the dots, as it were. That's why Giriraj Maharaj said, he mentioned that, what was it, 2 hours of lecturing is worth 100 years of reading or something like that. But not to deprecate reading, but speaking and writing crystallizes your thoughts. And of course, what will you read unless you've written? What will you write unless you've read? While I was writing my book, I made sure I was reading quite a lot every day, because I wanted to make sure I had something, at the top of my thoughts that was purifying. So writing, Prabhupada said, 2 lines, 4 lines, write your realizations. It's not that you have to write a book every day, but write something, write something, write something, write something. That will be pure. And Prabhupada said it may be published, it may not be published. But that activity of writing is valuable. And then we'll see that some writers will do something that's not only valuable for them, but when you read it, you say, well, we could do something here. This could be an article, this could be a book. And when you do it also, you get better at it. So writing and then publishing in some place, and there's so many places to publish. I know there are local ISKCON African magazines and so on. Then there's PTG, which has space for African authors. There's the pamphlet program, where again, there's opportunities for authors. There's all sorts of fora out there, your local newspapers and magazines and websites and so on, where they're actually looking for content. What drives their economic existence is content. So they're always looking for something. And if you provide content, it may be challenging, it may be interesting, it may be simply different. So even just there, you can make a career, just writing to the newspapers, writing to magazines. Prabhupada also was writing to big men, writing letters, just on, what would you say, on hope or on as a matter of duty. Let me write to these important people and give them the message of Krishna. So in so many ways, write. And of course, on the BBT side, the managers have to think how to prospect, how to look for writers who will be able to connect with our audiences.
Yeah.
And encourage them and help them.
Yeah. So Maharaj, at this point, I'd like us to actually take a sort of overview of Africa as a continent and sort of forecast and project ourselves 20, 30 years into the future, if we could. Africa at the present moment has the fastest growing youth population in the world. By the year 2030, Africa will have the largest youth population in the world. And by 2040, according to The Economist, Africa will have the largest workforce population. In other words, those people aged from 18 to 45, 70% of the global workforce will be provided by Africa. So here is a continent with so much potential, particularly youth potential. And there's...
I showed before that Africa is a continent cursed with natural resources. When you have 75% of the workforce in Africa, then everybody's going to be looking to exploit that workforce. How do we squeeze as much out of them as possible? Then how do we take whatever wages we've given them and extract that from them also again in the form of spending on needless necessities and so on. So from that point of view, again, this message of Krishna consciousness becomes essential for the African continent.
Yeah, and that's the very point that
with your line of questioning, but it occurred to me.
But in fact, you almost hit the nail on the head there, Maharaj, is that there's a duty that we have here on the African continent, a very big duty and an important one, because of the reasons that you've just mentioned. And seeing the potential that is there in the continent, we've spoken about Africa, and Vaisheshika Prabhu in his closing statement in the last session, he such inspirational words. He said, not only is that potential there in Africa, but we're organizing. So I just wanted to ask you, how can the rank and file devotee, the devotees watching online right now, how can we take up the mission of book distribution ourselves? How can we come together and see the importance and the necessity of spreading this movement, given the unique and prevailing circumstances that are there in the continent?
Well, that was Vaisheshika Prabhu's presentation just before me. He's really the acharya for these things. He's the expert and full of enthusiasm and ideas and so on. Just you take those and you apply them to the African context. And African context means it'll be different from country to country. The East Africa is so different from West Africa. And in West Africa, countries are different also. So it's not just one strategy for the whole continent, but we need to tailor make things a little bit, or to focus on different countries. What can we do? Rather than just take a broad stroke and say, Africa has so much potential. Great, Africa has so much potential. Nigeria has so much potential. What can we do in Nigeria? Or Lagos has so much potential. What can we do in Lagos? Ghana has so much potential. Ivory Coast has so much potential. Congo Kinshasa has so much potential. Country by country, what can we do in this place to spread Krishna consciousness? How can we help the devotees there, the people there? How can the BBT contribute to the mission there? That would be my thought, that you can't just, Africa's too big, 1 billion people and 50 some odd countries, too much. Break it down into smaller parts. You may say, okay, this is the year of such and such country, and we're going to focus on it and make a tangible difference there. We want to bring things up. And then maybe the next year it's another, it's just, I'm just throwing out an idea, but focusing in on these individual places, because Africa as a whole it's like we want to change the world. Well, the world is too big, but change someplace nearby. Or if you can extend yourself further, change someplace else that we're connected with. But break it down into pieces so it becomes manageable and we can see a real difference.
Yeah. No, fully agreed. Breaking it into bite-sized chunks so that it's far more manageable and easier to organize. And there are a lot of questions that are coming in, I know, on Facebook and here on our Zoom webinar. But I just want us, before we actually tackle those questions, Maharaj, to deal with a final point, which is related in some ways to the last point that we just discussed, and the question of youth. We've obviously spoken about the potential of youth and the growing young population throughout the continent and specific regions and so on. As we're sort of like in like this transitional period, even within our movement and so on, for to preserve not only the institutional memory of Prabhupada, but his mood and mission, and translating that effectively onto the preaching mission in the continent. I thought it would be very nice for us to hear from someone such as yourself, who has served for so long and served Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of ISKCON and the BBT. I thought it'd be nice to hear some words of guidance and inspiration with regards to that, in particular for youth and the mission of book distribution in Sankirtan?
Well, it's Alexander the Great, as you know, conquered most of the known world when he was in his early 20s. We look at somebody who's like 35 and we say, well, he's still a little inexperienced, but so let's get with it. Young people can do things. If the yatras and the leadership and the organization will cut you some space, then make full use of it and do something. Otherwise, one of the great things about Africa, hey, choose a country and it's yours. It's one of the few parts in the world where you can still choose a country and do something there, be the pioneer of a country. We have lots of them where nothing is happening or next to nothing. So go out and do something. Don't wait. If you're in your 20s and you're not getting opportunities, don't wait for the world to catch on, because sometimes the world doesn't catch on, especially the old men don't catch on. So, or may not catch on. Grab it. Go out and do something, not something wild or crazy or unorthodox, you know, off course, off Prabhupada's course. But if it's off the beaten track in the sense of being not what we do every day, not just getting up and doing A and doing B and doing C and doing D and taking lunch and taking rest, and that's another day. If you want to go out and do something, if you want to go out there and be a pioneer, do it. Take blessings from senior devotees, take blessings from your peers. Don't be just a total maverick, but go out there and do it. Don't wait, because the world is not waiting. The need is great. You can do it online right now. It's probably not the best time to decide that you want that Congo Brazzaville needs new preachers, but do something. Take it in hand. If you've got the inspiration and the determination, get on it. If you like work in teams, get together with a few friends, get on it and do something. There's whole countries that are empty. Within the countries where we're doing things, there's whole sectors of the population that we're not reaching, where there's huge opportunity for development, and perhaps not in the way that we've always been doing something, or within the present. Yeah, not just reproducing the same thing that's done everywhere else. Some element of innovation, some element of adjustment for the different people in different places, and yet delivering the goods, not adulterating the content in any way, but delivering. We've got a great movement. We've got the holy name. We've got the best books in the world, the best process, the best books, the best knowledge, the best goal. Go for it. Don't wait.
Okay. We'll take some time to look at a couple of questions, Maharaj. I'll read this one that's come in on our Zoom webinar. The question reads, to what extent should devotees be bothered about what is going on in the outside world? Should devotees take externally relevant roles in the world while internally... I'll just read out the whole question. Should devotees...
Yes.
Yeah, right. Should devotees take externally relevant roles in the world while internally remain dipped in hearing and chanting? So I don't know if you caught the full breadth of the question, Maharaj. Basically, is asking, should what extent should devotees be bothered about their role and position in the world in order to be able to, I guess, preach and propagate this movement?
Our role is that we're the people who have a message to deliver, so we should deliver it. If you have a role in which you can deliver it, where that's contextually helpful, do it. If you're a scientist, deliver the message within the scientific context. If you're a student, deliver it in the context of the schools and colleges. If you're something else, deliver it within that context. So that makes good sense. Make use of what you've got. But don't think that, well, first I've got to become an economist. And then, because economists are respected, so if I become an economist, then I can spread Krishna consciousness. We don't need to do this sort of touching your nose by going around the back of your head, as Prabhupada said. With whatever you've got, whatever assets, whatever background, whatever credentials, whatever career, whatever resources, bring that to bear on Krishna consciousness and on spreading Krishna consciousness, and Krishna will help you. And other people will come who have other sorts of resources. Prabhupada wasn't a scientist, but he made disciples who were scientists. So he got to spread things in the scientific context that way. He didn't have to go to university and think, well, I better get a doctorate in biology or something so I can preach about life comes from life. He preached to scientists and they preach about that.
Yeah.
So that was Prabhupada's general approach. Take what resources you have and leverage them for Krishna service, engage them in Krishna service.
Okay. There's another question from our Zoom webinar audience, and it's a question about the importance of training and education in Sankirtan. Its importance. How can why is that relevant, and how can we implement it?
There's two things. One is there's something to be said for just doing it. There's not like a standard, everybody has to do it this way rule. If you're enthusiastic, go out there and Krishna will help you. I'm enthusiastic, you'll find something new, some other way. How did they even start book distribution? Somebody was enthusiastic and determined, and then they started having breakthroughs and realizing that they could distribute books, and then even stacks of books. So a lot is to be said just for your own individual enthusiasm and desire. That's point one. Then for point two, if you want training, you want guidance, you want to find out about ways that work and techniques that work and approaches that work and ways of thinking that work, then Vaisheshika Prabhu is your man. Distributebooks.com, the Bhadra program, the calling parties, you have a wealth of his book, our family business. We have a wealth of resources. If you're looking for how-tos and practicals and even inspiration, how do I get in the right frame of mind? Vaisheshika Prabhu has provided such rich resources. So take advantage of them. And take advantage of other devotees who are ahead of you, who are inspired. He said that also, you get behind somebody who's clearing the space for you. So
Yeah. In fact, there's another question here related to training and education. It's a two-part question. It says, what facilities and training and education is being facilitated by BBT Africa to cater for the expected growth of communities? and
Growth of what?
of communities. And then it continues, what education is there for existing communities to expand themselves to this expected growth of people from various cultural backgrounds? So I think the question is referring to how can this education and training have a certain degree of cultural sensitivity depending on and adaptation depending on where you are in the world, and I guess specifically for us in the continent.
I'm a little unclear about what's being, where that question intends to go. Are we speaking about educating devotees generally, educating them in different arts and sciences of Krishna consciousness, educating them in the philosophy and so on? It's not really clear to me where we're going. Education is crucial. We want to train and educate. Prabhupada said there are different stages in Krishna consciousness. The first stage is to awaken someone to the importance of spiritual realization. Then the second stage is when he comes forward. Please initiate me, please train me. That's the next stage. Then the next stage is to learn about the different dealings of Krishna's energies, Radha and Krishna, and comes in at that level. And Prabhupada said the fourth stage is always absorbed in thinking of Krishna. So we're working on the first two stages to awaken people and to train people. That bhakti community means training people, bringing people in, helping people progress on their spiritual course. And then further, our own ISKCON communities. I see a tremendous opportunity in Africa for a community sort of development. There's lots of land. There's great weather. You can put something in the ground and put a little water on top of it and wake up the next morning and pick the fruit. You know, it's not like Norway or something, you know, with a 3-week growing season. And that too for cherries or something. In Africa, you can grow everything. It's wonderful. So it's just so conducive to an agrarian way of life, simple living, communities. For your happiness, chant Hare Krishna and serve Krishna. It's just lovely for all that. Except that people are all bunched up in the cities, being miserable, being exploited, being sort of stuck. So the opportunity is there in Africa for a simpler way of life, a more meaningful way of life. And BBT should contribute to that. But our contribution is, after all, we're publishers. So our contribution is books, philosophy. Yes, we should help with courses and training and so on. But the BBT is not everything. It's not that the whole movement is the BBT. We work in conjunction with the rest of the movement with ISKCON. So wherever the BBT can help by publishing anything, books, pamphlets, audiobooks, online publications, wherever we can do something with publishing, then wonderful, the BBT should help. But it's not that if we want to do something in some part of Africa, well, then we look to the BBT, because the BBT is not set up for that. It's not set up to be the sort of central preaching resource center in terms of financing temples, and although to some extent, yes, but when it comes to maintaining temples and growing things, then there's ISKCON. That energy of ISKCON and the energy of the BBT should be combined.
Okay. Then we're going to wrap this up, Maharaj. And I think there's a final question that I thought was relevant for us to conclude with, and that's the question of, now that we've sort of ventured out and experimented with this online platform, the question and that someone on our Zoom webinar posed was, what lessons can we extract from this 2-day conference that we've had, and just briefly, what are some of the areas that we can improve on and work on to help galvanize the effort in Sankirtan on the continent?
I think I'm a bit at a disadvantage because of the time zone difference. I haven't attended all the sessions. I get started around 9 o'clock my time, so I've missed a lot of the conference. I'll go back and catch up, but it's hard for me to sort of summarize or extract from what's gone on because I haven't always been here. So perhaps you want to focus your question in such a way that I can say something that would be more useful.
Yeah, I think in our personal discussions we've chatted about the conference being a regional one, and how this has given us the opportunity not only to extend out into the continent, but so many people from around the world are watching right now. So yeah, having this opportunity to have the conference online, what do you think are like the key advantages with regards to that, and what are the areas that we can capitalize on and use moving forward with regards to this sort of format of conferencing?
Well, the conferencing is useful in this way, that we're able to get together the whole continent for an event like this. But what I would think is that you want to use the same tools locally. It's not that every week or so we want to get everybody together from all the countries of Africa where we're doing something, but take the same tools and do something local. We have groups that are meeting in America, 6 people, 10 people on Zoom, reading Prabhupada's books, just having classes. We have some of our groups are from 60 to 100 people, depending on the day of the week. Some of them are in the neighborhood of 15 or 20. You can have 5. It's not that it has to be a grand extravaganza. You can do something small and powerful. And there's a lot to be said for small groups. There's an awful lot to be said for small groups, because when you get to a large congregation, 100 people, 200 people, 400 people, you start to lose community. It starts to be that not everybody knows everybody. Not everybody has a relationship with everybody other than a sort of Haribol relationship. But you can start groups of people who share similar interests. You can have groups of young people. You can have groups of women. You can have groups of particular communities. You can have, a Soweto Bhagavatam reading group. You can have young married groups. You can have old people's groups. You can have Bhagavatam groups. You can have Kirtan is hard on Zoom. It doesn't really work very well. You can have japa groups. It doesn't have to be one big thing. Anybody with a computer can have a Zoom account, and you don't even have to put any money in. Take your 40 minutes and run. Free account.
Yeah.
So and we could talk about how you can extend that. But anyway, take your time and get on there with your friends, with people that even just people you have some affinity with, people who think like you or who have the same kind of inspired by the same kind of things that you're inspired by. It doesn't have to be an official temple sponsored da 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 da. Get together with small groups of people who are enthusiastic about something Krishna conscious.
Yeah.
That there I would see a lot. And then you can network into larger groups and so on and so on and so on and so on. And those who are organizers may be able to organize such small groups. There are tools for doing that also, so that you don't have to wait for sort of the spontaneous appearance of these small groups. You can also organize them and make them happen and invite people to join them and grow them and so on. Or they may develop spontaneously. But I see that's where your real opportunities are. It lies in smaller groups of people who have a feeling of affinity, people who have a feeling of community. And yes.
Yeah. And with that, Maharaj, I just wanted to thank you so much again for giving us the time. And hopefully those small gems of wisdom that you've shared prove relevant for us and practical for us in this day and age. So thank you again. I'd just like to conclude for everyone who's watching. This is, of course, the final session of our 2-day online BBT Africa conference. This is, of course, the 11th annual conference. So we're starting a new decade as well of these conferences. And I wanted to extract 4 points because one of the major factors of the BBT Africa conference is that we extract resolutions from these conferences, and those resolutions become practical action points for us in the coming calendar year. And the 4 points that we've noted down as a team, as the BBT Africa team, through the sessions that we've had and the questions that you have posed as an audience, are as follows. There's 3 main resolutions, and the first resolution is that, of course, it being a new decade of conferences, we want to embark on and establish a 10-year book distribution master plan to gradually grow and meet the growing demand of books and the spiritual knowledge that is there in the continent. Of course, we've spoken about Africa's growing youth population, and we want to practically break down and assign a goal to this. So a 10-year book distribution master plan that can be looked at annually and so on. So that's the first resolution that we want to take out. The second resolution that we'll be taking out as the BBT Africa team from this conference is to build platforms. And as Maharaj has just pointed out, these platforms can be in smaller groups or whatever it is, but to get in and amongst each other as a community, build platforms for regular contact with book distributors and BBT Africa ambassadors. We need to be accessible to each other in order for us to generate solutions for the continent. And then the third and final resolution that we will extract from this conference is to improve our online presence and the ease of remote book distribution or access to books. This will be done in conjunction, of course, with ISKCON, because it's work that needs both parties to play a role in. But we want to improve our online presence so that people are able to see and get access to Srila Prabhupada's books. And there are many subheadings underneath that, but that's an overarching point or resolution point that we'll extract from this conference. So just to reiterate, it's that 10-year book distribution master plan to cater for the needs of the growing population of this continent. The second is to build regular platforms of contact for book distributors and ambassadors, BBT Africa ambassadors. And finally, to improve access and online presence for Srila Prabhupada's books. And that will be done in conjunction with our local ISKCON centers and representatives. I just want to thank each and every single one of you on behalf of the BBT Africa team. I'd like to thank the BBT Africa team itself for the tireless effort that they've put in, the hours that they've put in. There's a huge backroom, well, a small backroom team that's put in a huge amount of effort. So I want to extend my gratitude to each and every one of you for your time and effort. And of course, if there's any way that we can be of service to you as our audience, if there's any recommendations and suggestions, our contact details will be published at the end of this Zoom webinar and on Facebook. You're more than welcome to get in direct contact with myself or anyone else in the BBT. And of course, I want to send out a call for service. If there's anyone looking for service, there's so much service to get your hands on. So if you're interested in engaging in Srila Prabhupada's movement, particularly in the form of book production, you're more than welcome to get in contact with me. And with that, we'll close off. Thank you. And I wish everyone a safe period ahead, a blessed period ahead. Continue to read Srila Prabhupada's books, and let's continue to rack our brains on how to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari 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 Bol.